Welcome back to Reddit Untold, where the pettiest revenge and the most satisfying payback stories on the entire internet come to life. I have got a whole stack of them for you today, the kind where someone pushed the wrong person one too many times and paid for it in ways they never saw coming. And before we dive in, do me one quick favor. If you enjoy stories like these, tap that subscribe button right now. It is completely free, it takes 1 second, and it genuinely helps this channel grow more than you could imagine. Seriously, hit subscribe, and you will never miss a new batch. Now, get comfortable, and let us get into it. This was posted to our /public freakout. It all started when I decided to pop into my favorite local coffee shop, the Daily Grind, to get my usual iced latte. Little did I know, this would end up being one of the most memorable days in the office. I had been working at Tech Innovators for just over 6 months by then. The company was known for its long hours and strict policies, but also for its fair treatment. Well, mostly. There were times when you could tell they weren't quite following their own rules, like when Karen Stevens, our HR manager, would occasionally skip out on her parking spot privileges. Anyway, I walked in, greeted the barista, and mentioned that it was one of those limited-time drinks, a new mango passion fruit delight. She smiled politely, but didn't make any comment about giving me a free one because it was new or anything. Instead, she just asked for my usual order. But something in Karen's face told me to push her buttons. Maybe the limited-time drink had sparked some kind of hidden desire in me that I couldn't explain, some rebellious streak I hadn't known I possessed. As if by instinct, I said, "I heard it's a special offer for this week only. If you're not going to give everyone a free one, could you at least do the same for me?" Karen looked taken aback, but didn't react verbally. She just nodded slightly and continued making my drink. I sipped on my latte as I waited for her response. When she handed it over, she added, "Just remember, this is not a company policy thing. If you want free drinks, you'll have to ask the management." I took the cup and walked out with grace, inwardly smirking at how easy that was going to be. I made my way back to the office and waited for Karen to make her next appearance. She showed up 10 minutes later for our morning stand-up meeting. As soon as she stepped in, I couldn't help but chuckle at the look on her face. Her eyes darted around the room, trying to find out if there were cameras or any other prying eyes. Then, she caught me looking and froze. "Is everything all right?" one of my coworkers asked. Karen forced a smile and nodded, but I could tell something was up. "Everything's fine," she replied. I kept quiet for the rest of the meeting, enjoying the little win inside of me. Afterward, I saw her retreating into the HR office. A few minutes later, it was my turn to walk in there. As soon as Karen saw me, she looked nervous and asked, "Can we talk?" "Sure," I said casually, taking a seat across from her. She didn't say anything for a moment, just fidgeting with some papers on the desk. Finally, she cleared her throat. "So," she began hesitantly, "there seems to be some confusion about who gets free drinks around here." "Confusion?" I repeated, pretending not to understand. "Yes," she continued, looking at me directly. "I'm aware that you made a request the other day and got your latte for free. It shouldn't have happened. I didn't ask for anything," I said evenly. "You offered it because this new drink was limited time. So why are we talking about it?" Karen hesitated, then said, "Look, I'm just here to inform you that there's going to be a social media announcement shortly. Everyone will get free drinks today, not just this week, but for the next 2 weeks, as a special promotion." I stared at her for a moment, processing what she was saying. The announcement would go out that very afternoon. She had realized too late that I hadn't actually gotten anything for nothing. I was going to expose her on Reddit. Back in my office, I quickly drafted a post and titled it, "Karen Stevens from Tech Innovators just gave everyone free drinks, except for me." It wasn't long, just enough to tell the story. Then I hit submit. Within hours, the Daily Grind had gone viral, and so had Karen. People loved the expose and were asking about how the free drinks promotion would play out. But what was even more satisfying was seeing Karen's face on social media, trying to contain her embarrassment while people called her out for it. The aftermath at work was, well, awkward. Management seemed confused by the whole situation, but quickly issued a statement affirming the 2-week free drink promotion just to cover themselves. Meanwhile, Karen disappeared from sight and wasn't seen in public again for weeks. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /I don't work here lady. I'm sure many of you are familiar with those moments in life when you just can't take someone's crap anymore. Well, That's exactly what happened at my workplace one day, except it wasn't even a moment, but an all-out battle. I work as a customer service representative at a major retail store called Bright Shine Mart. We've got everything from electronics to clothes, pretty much anything you can think of. Now, this particular incident took place in the electronics department. I was on my shift when this woman walked into our store. Her name? Karen. A typical name for an entitled person, don't you think? Karen had her shopping cart full and headed straight for a pair of headphones. One glance at the price tag made me wince. $450. Really? Those headphones? She must have thought she was in a jewelry store. I approached her with my usual polite demeanor. Excuse me, Karen, I began. Those headphones are currently on backorder, and we don't usually carry them. Can I help you find something else? Backorder? She snapped. Are you kidding me? I specifically came here to buy those. And who are you anyway? I'm Sarah, your friendly neighborhood customer service rep, I replied coolly. And as a public-facing employee, I have the authority to check inventory and direct customers. Karen's eyes narrowed. Check my ass. You're just trying to make me leave. With that, she stormed off, muttering under her breath. I couldn't help but chuckle to myself. So much for polite service. As it turned out, her anger was only the beginning of a long saga. Hours later, Karen stormed back into our store. She marched right up to me and started yelling again. Bright Shine Mart. I demand an apology for your staff's lack of customer care, she bellowed. Karen, we've already discussed this, I said calmly. Those headphones are not available, but I can help you find something similar. No, 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 she insisted, waving her arms wildly. I want a refund. And if you don't give it to me right now, I'll be filing a complaint against your company for discrimination. Karen, we follow the store policy strictly, I explained. Refunds are issued only when there's an error or when products are defective. She threw her hands up in exasperation. Defective? They're brand new. You guys are trying to screw me over. Karen's voice was so loud that half the electronics department had stopped what they were doing and looked over at us. Karen, calm down, I said firmly. And let's take this outside. We went to a quieter area of the store. You're going to hear from me about this, she hissed. Bright Shine Mart is on notice. I could feel her anger simmering, and it was clear she wasn't done with us yet. But I held my ground. Karen, if you have any issues with our policies or service, we can certainly address them. However, until then, your complaints will be handled according to company guidelines. She stormed off again, this time clutching her cart tightly. But the damage was already done. It took days of my coworkers and I fielding her calls and emails. Bright Shine Mart's customer relations team had to be involved. The final straw came when Karen sent an email threatening legal action against us for discrimination. The HR department got in touch with me, asking for statements about this encounter. By now, the entire store knew about it. And then, here's where my friends and I stepped in. We decided to do something about Karen. We created a small online petition asking Bright Shine Mart to implement stricter training for customer service reps to handle such entitled customers better. We got over 100 signatures in just a few days. It was like we were part of a mini revolt against her nonsense. Bright Shine Mart responded by offering Karen a refund on the headphones, twice the amount she originally paid for them. They also implemented new training programs specifically addressing how to deal with customers like Karen more effectively. The whole ordeal ended up costing Bright Shine Mart around $1,000 in all, the original cost of the headphones, double the refund, and some additional expenses from HR and legal consultations. They were forced to acknowledge that their policies might have been lacking, which was a good outcome for us. In the end, Karen never followed through with her threats of legal action. She seemed embarrassed enough by the whole fiasco. It's not every day you get to teach someone a lesson in a way that benefits everyone. So there you have it, Karen versus Bright Shine Mart. How do you think I should have handled things differently? Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /malicious compliance. I sat down at my usual booth in the bistro d'elegance, savoring the familiar comfort of knowing that I'd be treated like royalty. Every server knew me as Karen, a regular, generous tipper and regular reviewer. Today, though, her attitude was off the charts. She breezed over with that all-too-familiar forced smile, but didn't even take my drink order until 20 minutes in. Karen, I called out to her from my booth, where she hovered awkwardly behind a stack of dirty plates. She harumphed and looked down at me. Yes, Ms. Walker. Really? Karen, I said, rolling the name with a hint of smugness. This is why I'm such a big fan. You know what you're called here. She bristled, but nodded. Right. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. Look, I've got this perfect review queued up and posted to Yelp right after I leave tonight. One minor detail, though. If you don't do something nice for me soon, it's going to be a much less favorable one. I hope that makes sense. Karen's eyes flickered with unease. Of course, Ms. Karen. I smirked at her discomfort as the other servers started whispering around their stations. This would be good, just the right amount of tension. Her shift was getting busier, and it took a minute for me to realize she hadn't brought my water or drink order yet. I picked up a menu, glancing up every few seconds, and finally, with exaggerated patience, said, I take it you're not going to be too long? She hurried off, her footsteps echoing slightly in the crowded restaurant. An hour passed agonizingly slowly. Waiters sidestepped around me as they rushed to busy tables, but still no drink. When she finally returned, I tapped my fingers on the table impatiently. Karen, here you go, she said hurriedly, placing a lukewarm glass of water down with such force it nearly sloshed out. I'll bring your food right away. I watched as she scurried off, muttering to herself. That's when I knew she was just as screwed as I was. By the time my main course arrived, the air felt heavy with anticipation. Karen hovered by my booth, eyes darting nervously back and forth between me and her other duties. Karen, I said calmly, leaning closer. Tell me, what's your commission on drinks? She hesitated but then answered quietly, about 12%. I leaned in conspiratorially. Imagine that. If I just left a generous tip now, it would cover my meal and send you some of the extra. I waved a $10 bill at her. Take this, give me an excellent review when I'm done, and voila, you're good. Her eyes widened as she saw the amount and started to protest. But that's where she made her big mistake. Karen, I interrupted smoothly. What's your favorite flavor of ice cream? She squirmed uncomfortably before answering quickly. Chocolate. I laughed softly. Perfect. I stood up, placing my untouched plate on the table. Now, can you please make sure to mark me as having left a generous tip and include that in the review? You know what's funny? Not just because of how much, but because of where I'll put it. I walked past her, stopping at the hostess desk to ask for my check. As she scampered off to fetch it, Karen followed me anxiously. Ms. Walker, she gasped, are you? I am now, I declared gleefully as I slid a $20 bill onto the table and signed my name. Enjoy your chocolate ice cream. As soon as I left with the check, the other servers erupted into laughter and clapped their hands. Karen stood there for a moment, stunned, before she ran off to deliver the check. I chuckled, heading out with my Yelp review already written on my phone. Satisfied, I strolled out of the bistro d'elegance knowing that sometimes, just knowing when to cut your losses and have a bit of fun pays off. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /entitled people. I've never had it out with someone in my professional life before, and if you have, it's probably because they did something way worse than what Karen did. But here we are, with her being a perfect storm of entitlement and rudeness that turned into viral backlash. Karen was my direct supervisor at the marketing firm Mumbo Jumbo. She had been there for about 5 years before I joined as an entry-level social media coordinator, and boy, it didn't take long to realize she wasn't just entitled, but also a pain in the ass. One day, while we were on a team meeting, Karen walked past my desk and rolled her eyes at me when I tried to contribute an idea during brainstorming. That was the last straw. The next week, there was an office-wide client appreciation event, and I noticed that Karen seemed extra snarky when she overheard me talking to another team member about how we could improve our engagement rates. It was like the whole room stopped for a few moments as everyone looked at her, waiting to see what juicy insults or passive-aggressive comments were going to come out of her mouth. Fast forward to the end of that month. I received an email from HR saying that they had some feedback on my performance. Apparently, Karen had complained about me being too outspoken and unprofessional. She called me a whiny, self-important know-it-all. That's when I decided it was time for a little payback. I started by subtly gathering all the evidence. I saved emails where she talked down to her own team members and even recorded our last interaction on my phone. Just make sure to always have someone else in the room. I created an Instagram account called @Karen Lacks Etiquette, making it look like a regular person's profile. Over the next few days, I posted photos of Karen in awkward situations, like her trying too hard at a staff meeting or being caught by security for walking out with a company t-shirt. The post got plenty of engagement, but I knew that viral content needed more. So, on a Friday afternoon, when all our clients were gone and Karen was the last one in, I had set up a series of prank text messages from her supposed coworkers praising my social media strategy. I also uploaded some recordings where she was caught laughing about how unprofessional we could be, but I edited them to make it sound like she was being overly critical and unappreciative of others' hard work. Within minutes, Karen's phone started going wild with notifications. She went from looking confused to realizing what had happened. A few more posts later, the video of her crying in our conference room quickly spread across social media. The hashtag Justice for Nicole swept through not only our entitled people, but also made its way into bigger networks. The aftermath was intense. Karen lost her job within a week. Her career in marketing took a nosedive after the scandal went viral, and she never got another offer for years. Meanwhile, my standing at Mumbo Jumbo improved significantly as people saw me not just talking about issues, but taking action against them. It was satisfying to see how even the entitled can be taken down a notch when everyone else catches on. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. Real quick, if you're enjoying this, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. It's free and it helps a ton. Okay, back to it. This was posted to our /public freakout. It all started when I hopped onto the train one chilly morning in Boston. The weather had been brutal, so I grabbed the nearest empty seat next to a woman who looked like she was having her own battle with the elements. She was wearing layers and seemed to be staring down her iPhone screen. But about an hour into my commute, things took a nosedive when this lady introduced herself as Karen, a tall, slender woman in her late 30s with a no-nonsense attitude. It wasn't until she opened her mouth that I realized how much of an insufferable pain in the neck she was. Karen leaned over and asked if she could sit here instead, gesturing to the open seat beside me. With all the politeness in my body, I nodded and tried not to grimace as she settled herself into the chair. She immediately began a monologue about how unfair it was that men take up so much space, especially on public transport during these long winter months. It was like listening to a broken record. Men are always occupying more than one seat, she grumbled. Women and children should have access to their own spaces. I tried not to roll my eyes, but the only thing that kept me from doing so was how loud her voice got when she started talking about how women's bodies were weak and needed extra support. I can't believe you'd even sit there, she said, staring at me with a look of disapproval. It's such a waste. I tried to deflect, but soon realized it wasn't worth the energy. Instead, I decided to play along for now, just to see how far she would go. Well, I replied calmly. It's not like this is an emergency or anything. Karen sneered at me and turned back to her phone. The rest of my commute was filled with awkward silences punctuated by Karen's complaints about the public transit system being made for men's bodies, how it just wasn't fair that a woman couldn't find 2 consecutive seats. I tried to stay patient, but it was becoming increasingly clear this wouldn't end well. As we pulled into our station, Karen stood up and began making her way down the aisle, clearly intent on continuing the argument. But then something funny happened. She stumbled slightly, almost falling out of the train car. Her phone clattered onto the floor as she tried to steady herself with a nearby passenger's arm. I watched in satisfaction as she struggled, finally losing her footing and collapsing gracelessly into a middle-aged woman holding a big bag. The other women in the car snickered, some even pointing at Karen while whispering among themselves. Karen, however, had zero sense of humor. She quickly got to her feet, glaring daggers at everyone who dared laugh or shake their head knowingly. But by the time she reached me, her cheeks flushed with humiliation and anger, I just offered a polite smile. She demanded an apology, but I didn't oblige. Instead, I simply said, "Next time, please make sure you're not going to trip before you start complaining about men taking up too much space." Karen stared at me for what felt like an eternity. Then she opened her mouth to say something, probably another tirade about the unfairness of it all. But before she could get a word out, I leaned over and said softly, "By the way, the last thing I wanted was to make things awkward between us on public transport. I just saw an opportunity." She glared at me for another moment before finally turning away, looking like she might cry. As the doors closed behind her, a few chuckles echoed through the car. The rest of my day was spent pondering what else I could do to ensure Karen had a memorable and uncomfortable commute in the future. And so, that night, I posted this. Okay, Reddit, here's the deal. If you see a Karen who is whining about seat sharing or anything public transport related, make sure she knows exactly how much space SHE takes up on the train. Bonus points if she slips or trips while making a big stink. Hashtag Karen in public transport, hashtag gender norms in action. Within hours, my post was flooded with stories of Karens from all over Boston and beyond. The community had rallied around me, sharing their own experiences and tips for getting back at the many Karens who seemed to think they owned every available inch on public transit. As I write this now, there's a whole subreddit dedicated to these kinds of encounters. It's hilarious seeing some of the photos and videos that come in. Karens with giant handbags, Karens trying to squeeze into two small seats, and Karens who just look like they're about ready to have a meltdown. It turns out, we're all for each other when we see one of our own in action. And maybe, just maybe, a little bit of payback is exactly what some Karens need to realize, that public transport isn't just about the number on their ticket. Everyone's got to share. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /I don't work here lady. A few months back, I went out to dinner with some friends at a new place in town called the Golden Spoon. Everything started off smoothly. It's one of those cute little spots you find on the corner with big windows and soft lighting. My order came, and the steak was okay. Nothing special, but not terrible either. Anyway, as soon as my meal arrived, I couldn't help but notice that a few bites into the medium rare cut, the temperature had dropped to lukewarm. Not frozen, mind you, just kind of tepid. I mentioned it to our server, Sarah, who seemed genuinely apologetic and offered us free appetizers, which made for an awkward dining experience. We got the free fries and mini sliders, but they were more or less fine. Still, when we asked about a refund on my main course, things started to escalate pretty quickly. Our waiter, Mark, was just doing his job, politely explaining why we couldn't get our money back. I can feel myself going from mildly annoyed to irrationally pissed, the kind of pissed that comes with feeling completely unheard and wronged. Okay, I said through gritted teeth, you guys are not cutting it here. I am a paying customer, and I expect my order to be served hot. This isn't like an old fast food joint where your chicken fingers come lukewarm. I paid good money for this meal. Mark tried his best to placate me, but kept repeating that they didn't have any policies in place for this situation. After a few more minutes of haggling, it became clear he wasn't going to budge. I started making more of a scene. The other patrons were starting to take notice too, some even giving me funny looks. Screwed if I'm leaving here without my money back, I muttered under my breath. At that moment, I made the decision. I was going to get this refund, one way or another. I decided on a simple approach, requesting a written apology and a 25% credit toward future dining there. When Mark said he couldn't do it, I laid down the law. Listen up, buddy. I want my money back now, or I'm going to leave a 5-star review explaining that I paid for subpar service and your restaurant is now on a blacklist. Mark looked at me with a mix of shock and fear. He quickly scurried over to his manager, who was clearly taken aback by the situation as well. It took about 5 minutes for him to return. My friends were starting to get antsy during this whole exchange. The manager, a guy named David, came back with a somewhat reluctant nod. We'll give you 25% off your next visit, he said, still hesitant, but finally conceding. I could tell his demeanor had changed. Now it was more of a business transaction rather than a customer service issue. Fine, I grumbled. But don't think this is the end of our interaction. If anything goes wrong in the future, expect an angry email from a happy customer turned pissed. They processed the refund, and as we were leaving, I made sure to add a bit more drama by thanking them sincerely, but adding that maybe they should train their servers better next time. They didn't seem too pleased with me, and it was clear they would not be forgetting this encounter. After our meal, when I got back home, I immediately went on the website and created an anonymous account. I posted a review that was short but to the point. Not satisfied at all. Food was lukewarm and service unhelpful. Then, as promised, I included a note under my profile saying the Golden Spoon would be blacklisted from any future dining excursions for me. The next day, I got some interesting comments. A few people were outraged that I wasn't satisfied with the meal quality, but most of them seemed to agree that if they ever ordered lukewarm food, they would do the same thing. One even said he was going to contact the Golden Spoon and report them for poor customer service. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our/malicious compliance. It all started a few months ago when I took on my current retail manager position at Acme Department Store. My name is Alex, and from day one, there's been a presence at the store that just wouldn't go away. Karen Johnson. Karen had her own ideas about how everything should be done. She walked in and out of the storeroom like it was her private domain, issuing demands to staff left and right. Alex, can you please make sure this display is perfectly aligned with customer orientation? Or, hey Alex, could you check if the stock levels are updated? I mean, sure, I'm supposed to be helpful, but Karen's constant nagging started to wear on everyone's patience. One day, a particularly bad incident happened. Karen pulled me aside and demanded that we have an emergency meeting with all staff members after closing hours. Alex, you know how important these meetings are, she said, her voice dripping with unneeded enthusiasm. I sighed internally but agreed since it was just something to put on the calendar. The night of the meeting arrived, and every employee in Acme gathered around a small conference table. Karen launched into her presentation about efficiency metrics and customer service protocols. She went on and on for what felt like hours. By the end of it, morale was low, and everyone seemed irritated by her ongoing tirade. It was then that I decided enough was enough. I knew there had to be a way to expose her true nature in front of everyone. Make her look like the Karen that we all knew she could be. The next day, as employees were packing up for the night, I approached the store's manager, Sarah Lee, and explained everything. Sarah, you remember Karen's recent demands? She was here last night, making us stay after hours just to attend one of her endless meetings. It's gotten to a point where we can barely function. Sarah listened carefully. What did she ask for specifically? She inquired. I handed over my notes from the meeting. She wanted us to align all displays perfectly and update stock levels at closing time, I said, spelling out each task. It's like she thinks everyone is just there on her command. And last night was just another example. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. All right, Alex, let's work on a plan. We need to address this properly. Over the next few days, Sarah and I laid the groundwork for an expose. We decided to gather evidence of Karen's behavior in front of all employees during a store-wide meeting scheduled for the following week. The day arrived. The store was buzzing with usual activity as we approached our moment. As expected, Karen walked into the meeting with a big smile on her face, ready to lead us through another round of her favorite topics. She started off innocently enough, but then she began repeating the same demands that had been causing so much frustration. Alex, she called out at one point, can you ensure that all inventory levels are accurately reflected in our system by the end of today? I took a deep breath and raised my hand slowly. Karen, actually, I just wanted to address something. Recently, during your meetings and after-hours demands, it has become clear that these requests might not be practical or efficient for us. The room fell silent as everyone looked over at me. For example, I continued, last night's meeting was scheduled but ultimately didn't add any real value. We spent hours aligning displays and updating stock levels, which could have been done more efficiently during regular hours. Karen's expression faltered ever so slightly. But isn't that what store managers are supposed to do? I met her eyes. Maybe, but it's also important to balance the needs of our staff with productivity. We can still adhere to all standards without such excessive demands. The other employees looked around the room, and some nodded in agreement. Sarah took over from there, emphasizing how we needed to respect everyone's time and focus on actual work. Karen tried to push back, but was met with resistance. The meeting went on, and by the end of it, her authority seemed somewhat diminished. The staff walked out feeling relieved that the issue had been brought to light. Afterwards, Sarah approached me. Alex, I'm glad you stepped up. It's important for everyone here. I smiled slightly. Thanks, Sarah. But honestly, this whole thing was just about giving Karen and her behavior a little push back where it belonged. Everyone's reaction varied. Some employees seemed relieved that the issue had been addressed, while others were more cautious. A few even approached me afterwards, thanking me for standing up. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our/entitled people. You know those times when you step into a supermarket expecting the world on a plate, only to find yourself face-to-face with an entitled customer? Well, that's exactly what happened to me. I pulled up my cart and began making my way down the aisles. armed with my list and ready for whatever chaos might come. Little did I know, today was going to be a doozy. As I navigated through the crowded aisles, I couldn't help but notice how quickly people were moving past me, their expressions saying it all. This guy is on edge. The first sign of trouble came when I asked a young employee named Alex where the dairy section was. He pointed in what looked like a reasonable direction. But then he started mumbling something under his breath as if I had disrespected him or something. I didn't get why, but it didn't sit well with me either. Next up, I needed some baking soda for my pet's health issues. Again, Alex seemed hesitant to help. I couldn't hold back the frustration anymore and told him, "Listen, Alex, your job is to serve customers, not treat them like pests." He just nodded, clearly irritated but didn't push it further. But things really hit a boiling point when I got to the checkout. I had over 40 items in my cart, half of which were essentials for that day's dinner, and the line was moving slowly. The manager, a middle-aged woman named Sarah, stopped by and asked if everything was okay, sensing the tension. That was it. I unloaded all the groceries on the conveyor belt and turned to face her directly, my voice tinged with anger. "This," I said, gesturing around the checkout line, "is why people hate this place." The manager looked taken aback, but tried to defuse the situation by saying she would try to speed things up. But I wasn't done yet. I continued, "You guys are incompetent and don't care enough about your customers." The other employees who had been serving the few remaining shoppers were now visibly uncomfortable, some even looking towards the security desk. I went on, "If you can't handle a few more people, then get someone else who can." Sarah stepped up to me, her face red with frustration. "Sir," she began sternly, "this store is doing its best to serve everyone. We are short-staffed today due to an unexpected situation." I waved my hand dismissively and said, "Well, that's not good enough. You're screwing over people like me who need these groceries." The employees around us were starting to back away. One of them, a cashier named Mike, offered to help me bag some items while Sarah tried to calm me down, saying she would see if we could speed things up for the rest of the line. As I left the store, still steaming and with an unopened bag in my hand, I couldn't help but feel that I had just delivered a pretty solid comeuppance. The employees looked relieved as I walked away, but their expressions were one of genuine gratitude, like they deserved it. I left knowing I had made a statement. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. And honestly, most of you watching right now aren't subscribed yet. If these stories are hitting, change that in one tap. Now, this next one is even better. This was posted to our /public freakout. From the start, it was clear that Karen had been left in a tizzy over a pair of shoes she'd bought online. Let's call them sapphire soles. The refund policy wasn't as straightforward as she would have liked, and what started as mild irritation quickly turned into full-on exasperation. Karen had spent a significant amount of money on these sapphire soles for her daughter's birthday. She wanted to ensure the shoes fit properly, but found that the size was slightly too small. When trying to return them, Karen realized that the return process required filling out an elaborate form and providing detailed reasons why the product didn't meet expectations, like a lawyer drafting up a case. She posted this on Public Freakout, detailing her frustration. "All right, I bought these sapphire soles from XYZ Shoes last month. They were supposed to be a size 8 for my daughter, but they're too tight. According to their refund policy, I have to fill out this 10-page form and justify why the shoes don't fit properly with specific medical reasons if needed. Can you believe it? This is so ridiculous. Who has time for that?" The post quickly gained traction among users who were familiar with complicated return policies. One user responded with a suggestion. "Hey Karen, maybe you can just write, 'My daughter's feet hurt, and we need to change the shoes.' That should cover it." But Karen wasn't having any of that. She decided she was going to make this as difficult as possible for XYZ Shoes. "Fine then. All right. I bought these sapphire soles for my 8-year-old who suddenly grew an extra foot in a week, and now they're way too big. The refund form is ridiculous, so I'm sending back the shoes with a letter saying it's because of an emergency medical condition that required immediate attention." Sounds like something you'd see on Law and Order, right? And she did exactly that. The form was filled out meticulously, detailing how her daughter had suddenly undergone an urgent medical intervention and needed larger shoes due to unexpected growth spurt. She even attached a fictional doctor's note. A few days later, Karen received an email from XYZ Shoes. The response was a mix of confusion and frustration. "Dear customer, Thank you for contacting us regarding your recent purchase of sapphire salts. We have reviewed the information provided and can confirm that we do not typically process returns based on sudden growth spurts or emergency medical conditions. Could you please provide more specific reasons why these items are unsuitable? For future reference, our return policy does allow for exchanges within 30 days of receipt, so if you're still interested in exchanging them, please let us know. Sincerely, XYZ Shoes Support, but Karen was satisfied. She took to the comments section, not only responding, but also sharing her joy at making things complicated. XYZ Shoes can't handle my ridiculous story? Classic. I guess they've got to hire a better customer service team. She didn't return any of the shoes and instead kept them, knowing she had successfully messed with their refund process. The aftermath was amusing. Other users couldn't help but chuckle at her antics. In conclusion, sometimes dealing with complicated procedures just means creating more complexity yourself. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /I don't work here lady. I couldn't believe what I was seeing last night at Bobby's Bistro. It started with just a little irritation, but escalated into a full-blown nightmare. Let me set the scene. It was a busy Friday evening, and we were about halfway through our dinner. Karen, let's say 35 years old, was sitting at a booth near us. She had been there for over an hour, and her behavior was becoming increasingly erratic. We could hear her argument with someone else in the restaurant from across the room. Initially, it sounded like she was just venting about something trivial, but then the tone shifted. "Screwed up my reservation," she bellowed at what seemed to be a manager. I'll call him Mike. "This place is always packed on Fridays. I'm never going to get this table." Mike, who looked genuinely uncomfortable, tried his best to calm her down. "Karen, it's just a small issue," he said through gritted teeth. "There's no need for such an outburst in here." But Karen was having none of it. She stood up from the booth, causing some of her drinks to spill, and began pacing menacingly towards Mike. The other diners had started to back away. Even the bartenders were giving us a wary look. "Listen here, Mike," she sneered, stopping right in front of him. "I want my full refund now and a table closer to the entrance next time. If you don't give me that, I'll be back with my friends, and we're going to have this conversation all over again, but much louder." "Got it." Mike nodded, clearly trying to defuse the situation, but she wasn't done yet. Or better yet, she continued, glancing around to make sure no one was listening closely enough to hear her next line. "I'll just be a little more dramatic. Maybe leave a mess or two." That's when I knew something had to be done. Karen was clearly out of control, and it wasn't just about her table anymore. She was escalating this into a public spectacle that could ruin the place's evening. The restaurant staff quickly began to gather around them. It wasn't until security finally appeared that things started to come under control. A burly man in a black jacket with a red tie walked up calmly but assertively and placed Karen gently back into her seat. "Ma'am, this isn't your home," he said firmly. "We need you to calm down." Karen snarled at him. "Oh yeah? Watch me. I'll make sure everyone in here knows not to mess with me or my friends." Security took her by the arm and gently escorted her to a side room where she could cool off. Mike approached us afterward, sheepish. "Thanks for your understanding," he said. "Karen's had a bit of an incident. I decided that was good enough. There were cameras in place, and we could keep it quiet for now. But I couldn't just let it go like this. So the next morning at work, my HR representative called me into her office. "So, we have a report about some behavior from Karen yesterday," she said, opening her file. "From what our security says, you witnessed everything." "I did," I confirmed. "She was threatening to ruin the restaurant and had the staff on edge all night." "Well, given that, it would be wise if you put something in writing for your records," she advised. I typed out a detailed account of the incident, noting Karen's threats against Mike and how they could affect the business. The next day, I posted this to our /I don't work here lady. "Yesterday, there was an unruly customer at Bobby's Bistro who made some threatening statements towards staff and other patrons. Here's a detailed write-up of the incident. I included all the names, Karen, Mike, descriptions of her behavior, and what I had observed with exact dollar amounts for any refunds or additional services requested." The post got quite a reaction, with many people agreeing that someone needed to step up and take care of such situations. To my surprise, not long after posting it, Karen approached me in the restaurant again. "Can you at least give me my refund and a better table?" she demanded, clearly trying to act like nothing had happened. "Karen," I said evenly, showing her the post on my phone. I have your behavior down, and HR has noted it as well. She paled for a moment before sneering again. Fine, she muttered, turning around and walking away, her head held high but clearly embarrassed. The response was immediate and powerful. I got dozens of upvotes and supportive comments from other posters. It felt good to see such solidarity among the community against entitled customers like Karen. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /malicious compliance. Alright guys, let me tell you what happened. It all started at this big corporate holiday party last year. There were about 200 people in one of those fancy conference rooms with a massive stage setup and a bar that served only premium drinks. I won't go by name, but just call her Sarah. She was the woman making waves that night. Now, Sarah worked for ABC Corp as their VP of marketing. You can probably guess why this title made us all roll our eyes. She had a reputation for being one of those self-appointed divas who thinks everyone should be there to cater to her every whim. But I hadn't realized how bad it would get until that night. We were setting up the room, and Sarah kept complaining about everything. The lighting is too harsh, she whined. And where are my drinks? I need a refill. It was like watching paint dry, honestly. But then things took an unexpected turn. As the evening progressed, Sarah started making these little statements that were so petty it was almost laughable, until they weren't. She walked by someone's plate and said, "I can't believe you couldn't find me something better than chicken." And when she saw a man in a tuxedo wearing mismatched shoes, she exclaimed, "Screwed. Why do people have to look so untidy?" But the final straw came when our CEO, Mr. Thompson, was giving his holiday speech. Instead of being respectful and listening, Sarah interrupted him mid-sentence with her mobile phone blaring in the middle of the room. Everyone fell silent as she shouted into it. Why can't someone organize this better? That's when everything really kicked off. Sarah started having a full-blown hysterical breakdown right there on stage. She was yelling, screaming, and throwing a fit. It got so out of control that they ended the event early. When we finally had to leave, Sarah was practically in tears, but not over any real issue. More like she felt entitled to the attention. We left and walked to my car, but instead of getting into it, she decided to give me a piece of her mind. I didn't even know why she needed that. "You organized this poorly," she said through gritted teeth. I should have been treated better. I couldn't believe what was coming out of her mouth. So, I simply replied, "Sarah, let's just drop it here and go home." She took a deep breath and then said, "Fine, but next time you get the budget." That's when I knew I needed to teach Sarah a lesson. I didn't want to be mean or anything, but she had to learn that not everyone gives a damn about her drama. I decided to take it a step further and sent out an anonymous post on Reddit detailing what happened that night. I told stories of other people's experiences with self-important coworkers like her. I included a bit about how she interrupted the CEO's speech, even showing a photo of the room after her tantrum. The response was incredible, hundreds of upvotes and comments supporting me. People who had dealt with similar jerks were ready for some payback. One guy told his story about being verbally bullied by a colleague in a meeting. Another mentioned how their boss never appreciated them, only Sarah. But I didn't stop there. I started tracking down the catering company she used and discovered that they took a 15% cut on every meal served at these events. I contacted them and told them to expect an audit of their financial records. It was so subtle, but effective. They started cutting corners on food quality and service, making sure Sarah's next event would be far worse than the first. Months later, when Sarah found out about the changes, she went absolutely ballistic. But by then, it was too late. We had already moved on to other catering companies for future events. She didn't get invited back to any of them, which was a nice touch. In the end, Sarah realized she couldn't afford to be such a diva anymore. The backlash on Reddit put her in a corner, and her reputation took a hit that stayed with her for years. And every time I see her name pop up in our company's emails, I think of that night at the party. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /entitled people. You know, it's pretty common around here to deal with overbearing customers, but some of these requests are just beyond the pale. Anyway, my name is Rick, and I thought I'd share a story that really made me rethink how I handle such people. It all started last Saturday night at this little Italian joint in West Hollywood called Bella Figura. My wife and I had been trying to make reservations there for weeks because they always seem to deliver great food, but we finally snatched one up just after 6 p.m. I'd heard through the grapevine that the place was pretty trendy, so I knew to get a reservation a good few days in advance. We got our table and settled down. We hadn't even looked at the menu before they brought a basket of bread that my wife, Lisa, devoured almost immediately. When the appetizers finally arrived, I noticed this lady walking around with a clipboard. She must have been one of their servers. Then it happened. Out of nowhere, this woman, let's call her Karen, walked up to our table and said, "I'm Karen, your server tonight." As she spoke, she shot me one of those looks, the kind that says, "Who the heck are you? Why do I even have a job here?" It's a look of sheer entitlement. I just smiled and let her take my order for a margarita pizza. Easy peasy. But then, before I could finish looking at the wine list, she leaned in toward me again, whispering, "Just so you know, Rick, we have free bread with your entree because it's your anniversary." Now, while Lisa and I were happily married, her birthday wasn't this weekend. I just nodded awkwardly and hoped the whole thing would pass. But then came the kicker. Karen started listing out a series of unreasonable demands that made my blood boil. "Actually," she said, looking at me intently as if I should listen to every word, "I noticed you have a red shirt on. Since it's your anniversary, I'll let you pick which side of the restaurant your table is on." "Karen," I started. She didn't even wait for my response. "And, your pizza should be extra gooey. Because that's what a man would want, right? My dad always orders his medium rare and with extra cheese." At this point, Lisa looked at me with a mix of embarrassment and exasperation. The waiter, who must have been privy to her plan, brought the pizza without saying anything, just placing it in front of us as if nothing was amiss. I tried my best to enjoy my meal, but couldn't help glancing at Karen, who continued her onslaught with a bit more vigor. "On the lighter side," she added, turning to Lisa, "you can pick any wine from our 1859 selection, but please stick with white because you're not on your period." I saw Lisa's face turn red as she looked down at her glass. Karen didn't stop there. "And," she said in a tone that made me feel like the lowest of the low, "I'll make sure to come by after you've finished dessert and ask if you need anything more, okay?" By now, the other diners were starting to turn curious looks our way. Why was this one table getting such special treatment? The waiter kept glancing at Karen nervously, clearly uncomfortable with her demands. But he stayed silent and served us dutifully. After what felt like an eternity of dealing with Karen's intrusive questions and absurd requests, the bill came. She handed it to me along with a receipt that had all sorts of add-ons. Extra cheese, extra sauce, white wine instead of the original red. It all added up to over $180. I thought to myself, here we go again, Karen. Without even looking at the total, I put down my credit card and turned back to Karen, who was now practically giggling as she waited for me to hand it over. Just then, a young server with a noticeable sigh walked up to our table. "Karen, could you step outside for a second? We need to sort something out," he said in a tone that I could tell wasn't friendly. Karen looked surprised but obediently got up and followed the waiter out of earshot. As she left, I heard her mutter something under her breath about ungrateful customers. The relief was palpable as soon as Karen walked away, and Lisa finally cracked a smile, saying, "That's just ridiculous." I paid the bill, and we left the restaurant with our heads held high. No one else seemed to have noticed her bizarre behavior. As we left, I caught the waiter checking his watch nervously. Now, it wasn't like I could stay angry at Karen forever, but on my way home, I couldn't shake off that feeling of being taken advantage of, especially since everything had been over such a trivial matter. It made me think about what other tables were experiencing because of her and how they felt. So here's the plan. The next night, when Bella Figura hosted an after-work event for local professionals like us, I sent out an anonymous email to their management team outlining Karen's unreasonable demands, including a list of items charged to our account that we hadn't specifically ordered. I made sure to include some photos and even mentioned how it had negatively impacted the reputations of other patrons. 2 days later, an official letter arrived in my mailbox from Bella Figura apologizing for any inconvenience and stating they were reviewing their employee training protocols to avoid such incidents in the future. I felt a sense of relief and satisfaction that maybe this place wouldn't be as affected by Karen's antics again. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. If you're still here, you're my kind of person, so do me a favor and subscribe. Alright, the most satisfying payback is coming right up. This was posted to our /public freakout. I had to witness one of those moments where you feel like stepping into a 24/7 soap opera played out on some random Friday night, complete with a grand entrance and dramatic exit. It went viral so fast that if we were playing this in real life, it would have been plastered all over the TV. I was at the newly opened Pizzapalooza restaurant for what I thought would be a pleasant dinner. You know, just some good food after a long week. The place was packed, and as I was waiting to order my drinks from the bar, this guy, let's call him Mr. Big Shot, walked in with his gang of similarly entitled friends. They were sporting matching jackets that said VIP in big letters. Mr. Big Shot himself was wearing a pinstripe suit that seemed like it came straight out of the 1980s, and he looked like he owned the place. I could hear him grumbling to his buddies about how the staff can really be so rude sometimes, even before we were seated. It's not like the place was quiet or anything. There were waitstaff everywhere. Anyway, they were seated right next to us, and from that moment, it was all they talked about, being ignored by the staff. They'd scream into their napkins, "Can someone please bring us water?" Or, "There's an empty seat over here. Why are we waiting so long?" I tuned them out for a while, trying to get some work done on my phone. Yes, I was working dinner, but it became almost impossible as they got louder and more demanding. Mr. Big Shot even started counting the minutes aloud. 68, 69 minutes now. They're not coming. I could see his friends exchanging worried glances every time he said something like that. I was tempted to give them a piece of my mind, but then my own issues with customer service popped into my head. How many times had I waited too long for help only to be brushed off? So, I decided it would be amusing to document this entire mess in real time on Reddit as it unfolded. And boy, did I ever. I started a post titled "VIP Demands Constant Attention at Pizzapalooza" with a screenshot of their table. Immediately, there was a storm of comments and upvotes. One guy wrote, "This is happening right now? That place sounds like hell on earth." Another commented, "Time to switch to the delivery menu for life." Mr. Big Shot and his crew didn't seem to notice that I was the one documenting their nightmare. They just kept bugging the staff, even as I saw a waitress pass by with drinks in hand, but ignore them because there were others who needed help more urgently. The whole restaurant started to turn on this guy. His friends were starting to look embarrassed. "Why can't they see us?" he asked one of his buddies when another staff member walked by again, and they were still ignored. "Did you forget our names?" This is where things got real entertaining for me. I typed out an update. Just saw their favorite waitress trying to give them drinks. She's been trying to get here since 8 p.m., but the management seems to have forgotten their existence. The post started to gain traction, and soon it was covered in comments like, "I'm going to call management," or "That's what I'd do if I were you." Then, something unexpected happened. Mr. Big Shot himself got up, grabbed his buddies by the arm, and pushed them toward the entrance. He said, "Fine, we're leaving. We'll have food somewhere that serves their own customers properly." As they walked out, he turned to face the bar counter and gave it a little wave. I could hear him mutter something under his breath as he left. They didn't come back. I stayed there for a bit longer, just to savor the moment. The place started to calm down, and everyone was laughing about how that guy had ruined their evening so they could have theirs. It felt good to see a little justice. But I know what you're thinking. Why not just call management? Well, it's because you never really know where this stuff will go once you put it out there. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply making someone feel seen and heard, especially when they've forgotten about everyone else in the process. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /I don't work here lady. You know those moments when you're just about done with an annoying colleague or customer? That one person who always seems to push every button every time they walk into your store? Well, that's what happened in Karen's world. Only she wasn't my coworker. She was a customer. This all started on a Friday afternoon at the local electronics store where I work as a sales associate. The place was crawling with people, like it usually is on a weekend, but nothing to write home about until this one woman came in and immediately made waves. Karen barged into the store like she owned the place, not even bothering to say hello or "How can I help you?" She was practically hopping from one foot to another, clearly agitated before we could even greet her. I'll spare you the first few words we exchanged because let's be real, they were mostly just grunts and nods. But as soon as she saw a new phone model that caught her eye, she went full-on ballistic. "Where is this? Why isn't it here?" she demanded, practically shoving me out of her way. "I was in the parking lot an hour ago, and now I can't find it? This is unacceptable." By then, The manager had already come over to try to defuse the situation because, retail must be this chaotic all the time. But Karen didn't even look at him. She just kept pacing around, ranting about how she needed that phone and how she would not have left an hour ago if they were in stock. "Here, miss," I said, handing over a brochure of the model. "It should be in back." She grabbed it with both hands, but her grip was so tight it looked like she might rip it out of my fingers. "That's great, but where's the phone?" The manager finally stepped up to her and said calmly, "Miss, we do not have that phone model available right now. We expect them any day now." Karen's face flushed with anger as she stared at him. "But how can you even run a store if you don't keep stock of such popular items? I swear to God, this is the worst experience ever." By this time, about half the store was staring over at us. It was like watching a scene from a sitcom where everyone's eyes are on you, but you just can't look away. The manager tried to redirect her attention with a discount card or some other bullshit, which made Karen even angrier. "Nope, no discounts. I want that phone now, and I will not be treated this way." Just when she was about to launch into another tirade, a few security guards finally showed up and led her away without incident. The whole scene was over as quickly as it began. But here's the kicker. Karen wasn't done yet. She got to the checkout line and still had a fit. She screamed at the cashier while her husband stood there looking like he wanted to run for cover or help his wife, but she was having none of that. "Look, lady," the cashier said in a calm tone. "We can't let you cause a scene here." Karen practically threw her phone onto the counter and slammed down a $100 bill. "That's what I want. If not now, then take it out of my damn paycheck next month." And with that, she stormed off, leaving behind an open receipt and a half-finished transaction. So there you have it, aggressive customer at its finest. Afterward, I couldn't help but feel like we dodged a bullet, and we're just lucky the security didn't arrest her on the spot. But hey, someone finally got to see her for who she really was, and that felt good. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /entitled people. From the get-go, I felt like a voice of reason in a world that wasn't listening. I went out one day thinking my presence would bring light and harmony to the restaurant scene. Boy, was I wrong. I had decided to order a vegetarian meal at this trendy new spot downtown. Just because I'm trying to eat healthy and support the environment. But as you can imagine, not everyone on this earth is on the same page. The waitress, her name tag said Lila, was like a walking contradiction in every question she asked. "So, miss, would you consider sampling our new beef Wellington?" she chirped, before I could even get past the menu. "It's one of our best sellers." I gave her my best smile and explained my dietary restrictions. "No thank you, Lila, but I appreciate your thoughtfulness," I said with all the kindness in the world. But Lila was relentless. "And a taste of our house special? A little free?" I felt like I had to explain myself 3 times before she finally wrote down my order. By then, other diners started giving me these patronizing glances that I wanted to throw right back at them. Now here's the kicker. It was a free sample. Free. In this era where you have to pay for everything, even your tap water at some places, I thought it would be nice if people could just get samples as a courtesy. But no, Lila had her marching orders, and she wasn't giving up. "Are there any other items on the menu that are vegetarian?" she asked, pretending to check my order. I replied politely, "Actually, you already have it written down." Lila's eyes narrowed and she leaned in closer, as if I had just given away state secrets. "Really? Because when you said vegetarian, you didn't mention the sample." She was right. I hadn't. And so I did what anyone would do in this situation. I started questioning my actions and choices. And then it hit me. The sample was meant for her, not me. It was a free meal hidden under a guise of courtesy. She could serve samples to all the customers, but choose who got them based on their orders, subtly promoting meat consumption at every turn. So why should I pay for something she's giving away for free? I decided then and there to teach her a lesson. I went home and planned it out. A simple, yet effective revenge strategy. The next day, I returned with Lila and 2 of her colleagues, Marcus and Jane. I knew exactly what I was doing, but I pretended like nothing was amiss. As we waited for our food, I pulled out my camera phone and snapped a picture of the menu, ensuring every detail was captured, including the logo. When the waiter, yes, Lila, approached with the main course, I casually said, "You know what? I think it's time you get to try that house special after all." I pointed at the beef Wellington, a smirk on my face. just as a taste test. Lila's face turned from curious to confused, then to shock when she realized what was about to happen. She handed me her fork and waited. I took a bite, savoring it slowly, pretending like I needed time to decide if this dish was worthy of its billing. When I finally looked up, there was no mistaking the look in Lila's eyes. She had been tricked by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. "Lila," I said firmly, "I'm going to do something you won't like." I handed her back her fork and asked her for a sample of my vegetarian meal. She passed it over grudgingly, almost as if she was passing a piece of meat to a cat. I took the sample, looked at it in mock surprise, and then threw the whole thing into the bin. "See? Samples are for everyone." I turned to Marcus and Jane. "And here's a tip. Don't waste any more free samples on customers who clearly can pay." They stood there stunned, their mouths hanging open, as if they had just witnessed a minor miracle or some bizarre form of karma. The next day, the restaurant received an anonymous note that was plastered all over the walls. It read, "Samples for everyone, not just those in a position to demand them." The handwriting was unmistakable. My name tag had even been glued to the bottom, but it wouldn't last long without some serious attention from management. It's hard to say what happened after that. I went back one day, and there were no samples left on any table, but a sign that read, "Only serving customers who pay for their meals." Lila was nowhere in sight, but there were whispers about her being on a tight budget. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /I don't work here lady. Here's how it all went down. I've been working as an administrative assistant at Acme Corporation for over 3 years, but trust me when I say a parking attendant can turn your world upside down in the blink of an eye. It started on a Wednesday afternoon, and let's just say we all had a meeting with the devil that day. The office was bustling with people rushing to finish up their tasks before leaving, and as I parked my car outside the building, I felt like one of the lucky ones who found a spot right by the entrance. But fate had other plans. A couple hours later, out of nowhere, came a parking attendant, a woman I'll call Karen. She was all business, wearing her red vest that seemed to match the color of her personality. "Excuse me, ma'am," she said with an icy tone. "I'm afraid your car is parked illegally." My initial reaction? Confused and mildly irritated because my parking spot was perfectly legal. But then she continued, "There's no permit posted here for private vehicles, and we have to enforce the rules." Now, I had a permit, but it seemed like she wasn't going to be satisfied without proof. So I whipped out my phone, snapped a picture of the permit clearly visible on the passenger seat, and showed it to her. She huffed and took another look before reluctantly accepting that I was indeed allowed to park there. But then came the kicker. "While we can see your permit now," she said through gritted teeth, "we need to address this properly for future references. We'll issue a ticket but also demand compensation." My mind raced as I tried to process what she meant by compensation. "Excuse me?" I asked, trying to keep my composure. She leaned in close and whispered, "We're not just going to let you off the hook that easily. You will have to pay for the damage done to our property from your car being parked improperly." I couldn't believe it. This woman was completely out of line. I mean, yes, we all make mistakes sometimes, but this was a little too much. I stood there, trying not to let my frustration show. After a few more heated exchanges, with her demanding $200 as compensation and me arguing that no damage had been done, other than slightly denting the corner of a parked car next to mine, I couldn't take it anymore. I was done playing nice. I texted a coworker who happens to be our building manager and asked for his advice. He suggested taking some photos, documenting every interaction, and sending Karen an email detailing why this wasn't just an inconvenience, but a direct violation of my rights as a tenant with proper documentation. The next day, armed with evidence, photos, emails, and the permit, I walked back into her office with renewed confidence. "Karen," I said sternly, holding up my hand to halt any further nonsense, "I've reviewed your behavior today. It seems you have misunderstood or mishandled the situation. This is unacceptable." She raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by my assertiveness. "What are you talking about?" she asked defensively. "First off," I said with a firm tone, "your enforcement style is unprofessional and overreaching. You demanded a payment without any evidence of damage to your property from my car being parked there legally. That was inappropriate." She tried to protest, but then seemed to realize the ground shifting beneath her feet. "All right, let's discuss this calmly," she said, slightly backing down. I took out my phone and started playing back the video recordings we have of our parking lot. Here you can see my car clearly parked in a legal spot for over 3 hours. There is no evidence of damage from your car or any other vehicle. Karen looked at the footage, then at her desk where she had been documenting various fines. She sighed and began to gather up all those documents, clearly realizing that this could escalate into something beyond her control. Fine, she grumbled. I'll reverse the ticket. But I wasn't done. I also want to ensure your behavior doesn't happen again, I said. And if you see anyone acting inappropriately, document it properly. This whole incident is a reminder that we all need to be more aware of our responsibilities as members of this community. Karen nodded weakly, her demeanor noticeably deflated. And just like that, the tables had turned. The aftermath? Karen was reassigned from her role as parking attendant within weeks due to this incident and others where her behavior was found wanting. As for me, I returned to my day-to-day with a newfound respect for standing up for what is right, even when it's challenging. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. Quick reminder to smash that subscribe button if you want more stories like this every week. Okay, trust me, it's about to get so much worse for them. This was posted to our /public freakout. A few weeks back, I found myself at an outdoor market in my neighborhood, browsing stalls filled with handmade crafts and local goods. The sun was shining, and the air was fragrant with the scent of fresh flowers and grilled food. But amidst all that serenity, a scene unfolded that left me fuming. Karen, a woman around her mid-30s, had just purchased several items from a stall run by an elderly couple. As she moved on to another stall, she dramatically spun around, revealing a long white dress that was now marred with dirt and mud splatters, obviously from some of the handmade pottery she'd picked up. "Look what you've done. Hoopsie-daisy," Karen cried, waving her arms as if someone had just tripped on a banana peel. She stood there for a moment, staring at the mess, before turning to me with an accusatory glare. "Can't even clean your own clothes? Are you that poor?" I shook my head and tried to ignore her. The last thing I wanted was drama. But Karen wouldn't let it go. "You should be ashamed," she sniffed, clearly relishing in my discomfort. "How can a woman like you afford this dress if you can't even keep it clean? Gross." Before anyone could intervene or offer to help, she stormed away, leaving behind a cloud of her own self-righteousness. At first, I didn't think much of it. People being judgmental every now and then is part of life. But later that night, as I was scrolling through my phone in bed, I noticed the same Karen posting yet another comment about how rude everyone else at the market had been, using my name and the stall owner's names. She was trying to stir up a fight, leveraging her judgmental rant into something more. That's when I knew it was time for some payback. I decided to take a different approach. Instead of confronting her directly, I would create a situation that she wouldn't be able to avoid and make sure the tables were turned. The next day, I went back to the market with my friend Emily. We bought a few items from various stalls, then intentionally got our hands dirty by handling some of the clay pots and sauces on display. As we headed towards the exit, Karen approached us just as we passed her stall. Her eyes widened in recognition, and she quickly tried to recover. "Good day, ladies," she said with a forced smile, clearly catching herself. "Having fun?" I nodded, keeping my expression neutral as I looked at Emily. She mimicked my demeanor, nodding along as if everything was normal. "Oh yes, the food here is fantastic," I said, glancing down to reveal my hands covered in red sauce. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out a long white handkerchief, making sure to drape it around my neck and shoulders for effect. "Oops," I exclaimed, clearly agitated. "I can't believe this happened." Karen's face flushed with anger as she looked down at her own hands. They were spotless, of course. She opened her mouth to say something, but before she could speak, Emily interjected smoothly. "Screwed. Why don't you try cleaning your own clothes for once?" she said in a mocking tone that perfectly mirrored Karen's earlier words. Karen sputtered and tried to argue back, but the crowd had gathered around us. Stall owners and other shoppers were now exchanging knowing glances as they watched this public spectacle unfold. "Seriously, if you can't handle a little mud on your dress, maybe you should reconsider what you're spending so much time judging others for," Emily said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Karen's face turned red, but she couldn't argue the truth. The only person in this scenario who seemed to be handling it well was me, and that felt good. The aftermath was predictable but satisfying. Karen tried to maintain a facade of dignity as she walked away, but I could see her fuming from behind. A few stalls later, she approached me with an apologetic look. "I'm sorry if I upset you," she said, clenching and unclenching her fists. I simply nodded, not bothering to engage in a verbal battle that wouldn't change anything. Instead, we exchanged polite pleasantries before parting ways, and from then on, I barely saw Karen around the market. She did try to post about it online, but people were quick to call out her hypocrisy, making sure she had to face the same judgment she had been doling out all along. It was a small victory, but one that felt mighty satisfying in the moment. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /malicious compliance. It's not often you get to see a good, old-fashioned revenge gone wrong. You know those moments where you're just so tired of dealing with workplace issues that you wish there was a way to teach someone a lesson? Well, this is the story of Karen and how she decided to take matters into her own hands. Karen worked in HR at a mid-sized tech company called Quantum Innovations. She had been putting up with ridiculous meetings that went on forever, endless paperwork, and micromanaging supervisors for months. One day, after yet another grueling staff meeting where everyone was talking about the importance of team unity, Karen decided she'd had enough. She planned it meticulously, a simple, harmless prank that would make the department's head spin. Her idea was to move a small security camera in their office so it recorded someone from the HR department doing something totally inappropriate, like eating a candy bar or leaving dirty dishes on their desk. It seemed like an easy way to send a message without causing too much trouble. The next morning, Karen moved the camera with surgical precision and hid under her desk, watching through a laptop she had set up as a decoy. She was just about to slip away when her manager walked in unexpectedly. The timing couldn't have been worse because they happened to catch sight of each other. Her manager saw Karen's laptop and instantly suspected foul play. Karen tried to explain that it was just an innocent, quick check of the security feed, but her manager was not convinced. They went straight to HR for a debriefing. The HR team was shocked when they realized what had happened. Their camera surveillance footage showed Karen's laptop accessing the main server, which then led back to her desk. Karen thought she could get away with it until a security guard came by for their routine check and noticed that she hadn't moved from under the desk. They reported this to higher-ups who decided to investigate further. By the time Karen was confronted, her manager had been called in and everything was on the line. The story went viral within Quantum Innovations. Karen's coworkers were divided. Some thought it was a brilliant idea for taking back control, while others saw it as an act of sabotage that could damage the company's reputation. When Karen tried to explain herself, she couldn't just say, "I was bored and I didn't mean any harm." It wasn't looking good. In the end, Karen was reprimanded and put on probation. Her manager explained that her actions had caused unnecessary stress and that it was important to maintain a professional environment. The HR department was given stricter guidelines for camera usage, but they were also more cautious about their interactions with staff, knowing now that someone could get caught. Karen's attempt at revenge backfired spectacularly. She ended up losing her job because of it. As she sat in the unemployment office after being let go, Karen couldn't help but think that sometimes you just can't win. She hoped others would learn from her mistake and avoid making the same costly misjudgment. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /I don't work here lady. A few months ago, I went to a local cafe that advertised itself as pet-friendly. It sounded perfect. My dog, Luna, could come along without me feeling guilty about it. So off we went. The place was cozy and reasonably popular, which made me feel good. There were friendly dogs around me, but mine was just sitting at my feet, a little anxious. Then, the woman who owned the cafe, Karen, approached us. She looked over our dog and announced that Luna was fine, despite the fact that she kept sniffing me like I was an urchin. After we settled down, I noticed a dog barking loudly behind a table. It was another regular here. Her name was Sarah with her pug, Charlie. The barking didn't seem to bother anyone much until suddenly, there was a loud yelp followed by more barking. I looked over and saw that the pug had escaped his harness and started running around. But before Charlie could get back under control, he charged toward Luna. Before you knew it, they were barking like crazy at each other in this confined space. It got wild, with the staff trying to pull them apart. Then, out of nowhere, Karen walked over. She was visibly upset about something and started shouting at me. Why is your dog not under control? She demanded. I tried to explain that it wasn't my fault. Charlie had lost his harness. He's a good boy, I said defensively. But Karen didn't hear reason. She told me I needed to find another cafe, and then turned to other staff members who were clearly trying to calm down the situation. Fast forward an hour. The cafe was empty because everyone was leaving in a hurry, afraid of another incident. The staff tried their best to clean up the mess, but couldn't get Charlie out of my car. I called Karen again, hoping she would help, only for her to slam the door on me instead. That night, I couldn't sleep thinking about how she had treated us. My dog was perfectly behaved, and they needed more control over their own dogs. The next day, after researching other reviews of the cafe, it became clear that there were many complaints about poor management and inadequate supervision, especially when pets were involved. I decided to write a revenge post because Karen deserved to experience exactly what she had made us endure. I started by posting a video clip on Reddit that showed Charlie barking madly while the staff ignored his antics. Underneath, I wrote, "The pet owner isn't the only one with a dog problem here." Then I dug up some old Yelp reviews and sent them to Karen. They were all about how she'd handle complaints from other patrons. One review said they had even seen her walking by an upset family's table and just pretending it didn't exist, leaving everyone feeling ignored. Next, I paid attention as she was on her phone or talking with staff members during busy times, clearly dismissing customer concerns for pets. I collected this evidence over the next few days and compiled a long-form complaint, attaching all the screenshots and reviews. The headline? Meet Karen, how she handles pet issues at I Don't Work Here Lady. In the post, I detailed how she ignored multiple incidents with her own dogs, causing chaos for other customers. By the end, I had built up quite an arsenal of proof showing that her cafe was a ticking time bomb waiting to happen. Karen's response was immediate and defensive. I take full responsibility for this. I will get my staff to clean up properly and find better ways to manage pets next time. Her tone was one of false contrition, but it just made me more angry. She didn't admit fault. She used customer complaints against us. That night, I did something I should have done in the cafe. I contacted Yelp about Karen's reviews. Once they investigated, she got a warning notice and eventually lost her business license for not adhering to pet policies properly. The cafe closed down entirely, which was my ultimate goal. The day after all this happened, the staff seemed flustered but relieved. Many of them were friends with us, having seen how Karen had treated us. One waitress even told me she was glad I took action because that woman wasn't a good owner or manager. It felt satisfying to see her business gone and customers finally able to enjoy their time without being interrupted by poorly managed dog behavior. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /entitled people. I had been standing there, dripping wet, watching the clock tick over my ruined clothes. How dare she? Karen. Just the name sent a ripple of righteous indignation through me. It's like waiting in line during a freak rainstorm and having this so-called Karen insist on jumping ahead despite being way behind her. It was one of those days when you're running late, already sweating, and hoping your umbrella will be more than just plastic. You show up with the hope that others will queue up as they should, but she makes a grand entrance like some high-maintenance diva. The rain wasn't even heavy, just enough to make you question whether it was worth rushing outside. I had been in line for an hour, patiently waiting my turn. Now, at 30 minutes in, this Karen comes bounding through the door, soaked and sopping, with a look that said she owned the place. She breezed past me without a glance, making her way to the front of the queue where I was supposed to be standing. That's when it clicked. The line wasn't actually first come, first served. It was a joke. The cashier greeted Karen with a sunny smile and a "How can I help you today?" as if she were royalty or something. She demanded her refund and compensation for her ruined clothes. "I have to change, so what's your refund policy?" she barked, dripping into my lap. "If it's not immediate, I'm going to need a voucher for my discomfort," she added with another one of those smug looks. I had to hold back the urge to say something. But then, in that moment, I saw an opportunity, and it felt so good. So, I cleared my throat and said, "Well, Karen, just to be fair, we don't offer refunds on our umbrellas. It's a little too late for those. And as for your discomfort, why not try the store's new line of waterproof clothing? They're supposed to be pretty great." She laughed, this brittle cackle that made me want to throw my hands up in exasperation. "Waterproof? Please," she said. and it was like she expected me to roll my eyes at her. Fine, fine. I'll just take the refund, then. She stomped off to the counter again, where they processed her exchange. A few minutes later, she came back with a new umbrella, one of those fancy ones that cost over $100 and looked more like a fashion accessory than a weather repellent. I took this time to watch her closely, seeing how it didn't seem to make any difference as she walked around the store, still drenched. Now here's where things got really satisfying. In the middle of her little tantrum, my phone buzzed with an update about the line. The manager had noticed Karen's excessive weight and issued a special discount card for 20% off her next purchase. I couldn't help but smirk as she left the store clutching that piece of paper. She hadn't been happy then. Now, I just wanted to laugh. In fact, I got a refund on my clothing too. The manager called me over, looked at our exchange history, and said, "You know, I've never seen anything like this before. You're welcome." I left the store with not only new clothes, but also a little victory, one that felt earned and smart. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. And that is going to do it for today's episode of Reddit Untold. If you made it all the way to the end, you are exactly the kind of person this channel is for. So do me a favor and hit subscribe so you do not miss the next batch. Drop a comment and tell me which story was your favorite, and whether you would have had the nerve to do the same. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.